mysterious. She's also a badass, too. Solaris BlueRaven is a published author, producer, writer, editor, public speaker with a professional background in covert technology, surveillance, anonymous, I need more coffee, investigative research. She's also globally known for her experiences as a test pilot for synthetic telepathy black projects, of which she discloses in her book series, Eye of the Remote, which we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. She is a world-class psychic, clairvoyant, remote viewer, and system buster for MKULTRA related programs, and yet she's still alive today. How is that possible? We're going to get into that one. Ms. BlueRaven is also a certified second-degree black belt. See, I told you, badass. And has an extensive background in advanced science and mystical alchemy and healing arts. Yeah, and if that isn't enough, we're getting her over here to the KCR Digital Radio Network with her show Hyperspace, which is going to be following my show come March 18th, and I am so super excited to have her on my show. Would you please give a nice big round of applause for my guest, Miss BlueRaven, host of Hyperspace. Yeah!
Hello there.
Hey, Solaris, what is going on?
Oh, all kinds of things simultaneously. Great introduction, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I haven't had my coffee hasn't. Well, I shouldn't say my coffee hasn't kicked in. I just haven't had enough of it. That's the problem.
Here you go.
Well, it's Vegas. We're a 24-hour town. First thing I learned when I moved out here is apparently they don't serve coffee after 9 o'clock out here in Vegas, which beyond me shocks me, but you can't find a coffee spot open. They all close like at 8 o'clock. They serve you beer. But I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to be at the casinos at 3 in the morning, I want coffee to stay awake. But, it is what it is. But let's get into your experiences because, you were on one of the other shows, Misha's show out here. You do a lot with Misha from Starseed Awakening, and you have had just an unbelievable life when it comes to, these secret government programs that, that people don't want to talk about. They exist. Nobody wants to talk about it. Why nobody wants to talk about it is beyond me. I think probably because we all know that our government does stuff they shouldn't be doing, but I think it's very hard to swallow some of the stuff that that our government does in our black op programs. That if we actually really knew what was going on, I think there'd be a huge revolution against our government.
I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So let's get in a little bit about your background and kind of what put you on the path that you're on. I mean, how did you find out? This wasn't a volunteer program, right? This was just something that happened to you, and then you started getting more involved. And it wasn't something like, they go, hey, we're looking for volunteers. You didn't raise your hand, did you?
No, not at all, actually. And if you want me to go back into detail, it started off when I sent a book to a high-profile musician in a Canadian rock band that are very high-profile.
Oh, can we say their name, or are you going to get sued?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
good.
Rush. And Neil Peart is the person I sent my book to. And the story behind that is one of my kickboxing students had mentioned it, that he had gone through a tragedy, and this is when he lost his last family. And I had stayed, we go backwards a little bit here, I had actually been in touch with him over the years in the 80s and the 90s, and he would send me a postcard, so he knew who I was. So I felt comfortable enough to send him a book that I had written called Transmutation Through Ascension, which is just about spirit and consciousness and spirituality, and it's a very nice book. So I decided to mail that off to him, but within a week's time, my home was entirely under surveillance. My phone was tagged, my cell phones, my regular phones, my computer, everything in my house was being under surveillance. And then I was interconnected live feed real time with Michael J. Mosbach, who is actually Neil Peart's right-hand man insofar as surveillance and director of surveillance and security for Rush, and also the members of the band live feed real time. And I can go into the details of how they interconnect you live feed with the synthetic telepathy. And I know I'm going fast forward with data, so just stop me whenever you need to.
No, I think that's interesting because a lot of my listeners may not have known about. I know they know about MKUltra. I know they've heard the term, but it's weird unless you were part of this and it's a very. I don't want to say it's a secret society, but it's very careful who they let in. These MKUltra groups who are on Facebook or whatever and stuff, because they get if people have been part of this program, get very nervous at anybody new entering into this group if they don't think they always are just looking over their shoulder thinking somebody in the group is, working for the government. So I think, what happens is unless you had an experience with MKUltra, a lot of my listeners don't know what it means and what kind of hell your life goes through. So yeah, go ahead and elaborate, because I think my listeners would appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't wish this on anybody. I mean, MKUltra, in the old days, they used to have the old-fashioned MKUltra where they take you away and put you in a room somewhere with electric, shock therapy and all sorts of other abusive control mechanisms. But nowadays, they can do it with satellite-driven technology, which is what they did with me. So back in 2004, when I was being hit with all these types of technologies inside of my place, my house, with my husband and my stepdaughter there. What happened was they interconnected me live feed real time, and this is a satellite-driven technology. What they'll do is they'll map your electromagnetic field, your neural circuitry, your brainwave activity. Everything gets mapped and interfaced onto an artificial intelligence assault program where there's a live handler real time. Sometimes there are programmers, operators, controllers, etc. With mine, it was Michael J. Mosbach, live feed real time, Neil Peart, Alex Lyson, and Geddy Lee. And the real members of the band, not imposters, were there. These are the guys who pulled me into their R30 tour, live feed real time. So basically, as they were touring with that tour in 2004, I was there interconnected live feed with them. And Michael J. Mosbach was my primary handler in that whole thing. But I'll tell you what happens when you first get inducted. What happened to me was they were keylogging everything I was doing on my computer. So they were kind of putting me in a space of, they were using a transmission of signal to pull me in a more, I want to say, hypnotic space, because I felt like I was in an altered state of consciousness. Now, for me, I'm not somebody who does drugs or alcohol. At the time, I was teaching my martial arts class. I'm very athletic. Once in a blue moon, we have a beer, that sort of thing. But we literally are very clean people. So to feel like you're being drugged or lulled was a very strange thing. The next thing that happens is they opened up the communication system, live feed real time, and announced who they were, live feed real time, Michael J. Mosbach. At the time, I didn't even think Michael J. Mosbach was a real person, and then I actually met him on Maui. So these are the things that happened to me. But at the time, when they induct you, they'll put you through a program that's what I call psychotronic programming, where they take your psychic centers and they interface it onto an artificial intelligence program. And then they'll do a replay and a feedback program where they're showing you visuals, they're hijacking your psychic centers, they're projecting imagery to you. Sometimes it's remote viewing, sometimes it's data streams of other information. With me, I saw my handler, I saw the band, live feed real time. I saw other things that were more encrypted to some degree. They used a lot of pattern recognition with me, a lot of numbers and codes and serial numbers, what appeared to me as serial numbers. So I was seeing a lot of different things simultaneously, plus getting remotely assaulted. A lot of it's sexual. So they like to do things where they're mapping your chakra centers and they're trying to control and manipulate you on a many dimensional spaces and levels. So that's the technology. Now, this technology is provable, by the way. There are patents for it. The military has used artificial telepathy. This isn't something that's woo-woo. I've talked to the developer. Dr. Robert Duncan's one of the developers of some of this technology, which deals with psychotronic warfare and artificial telepathy. So you have all these different types of technologies out there that are black. They're literally not advertised because they work, and this is how they recruit people for remote viewers, spies, psychic spies. I think that's what they were trying to recruit me for, and that was kind of confirmed with Preston Nichols. So there are certain things I think they pull you into if you display a certain frequency and signature.
So you're talking, this is almost like the Macheridan candidate or something like that? Is that?
Well, absolutely. They can easily take you in, and when they're using the artificial telepathy live feed real time, you have a live feed real time handler. And the whole time,
let me ask you that, because you're mentioning handling. Let people know what a handler does, because when we think of handler, a lot of people associate it with dealing with animals, like you're their handler, you're controlling them, and that's kind of what they do. But kind of explain to what the handler's job specifically was for you.
Okay, his job was to basically do damage control when Peart was programming me, but also to keep me in a box. In other words, there were certain things they didn't want me doing, meditation, certain things that made me more independent. They didn't want me to be in that arena for. They wanted to keep me controlled and manipulated, and Mosbach was in charge of doing a lot of that manipulation through the artificial telepathy, live feed real time, basically just handling me like you would an animal, literally. If I pushed them back psychically or telepathically with the artificial telepathy, because I am very good at the communication, they would back me up with a remote assault, which would give me vertigo, take me to the ground. So things like that. So he was literally responsible for handling me, and actually almost portraying himself as my friend, as a very intimate friend. But at the same time, when I had to testify in 2006, he betrayed me in the courtroom. So definitely he was the one there to do the damage control and to initiate and assist with Peart in programming me.
Now, one of the things I had heard from many who have had these handlers is that you are controlled, and usually especially in the women's case, they are controlled to the point through sexual manipulation. In other words, they make you the victim. and they use that against you to kind of keep you mentally in check.
Right. Well, they definitely, what they'll do is when they map your sexual centers and they do that, they like to work with the Kundalini. And the one thing I did notice is that they were trying to do that to me. They were trying to sexually manipulate me and then try to program me into a space where I would be excited about certain things when that's not who I am and that's not a resonance with me. So I know they were trying to work those programs. They didn't work very well with me at all because I fought a lot of it. But they do a lot of the sexual manipulation. If you look back at Montauk, you notice that they'll work with the Kundalini back then too. It's always about the sexual energies because when you raise the Kundalini out through the crown and you start ascending that energy, it's extremely powerful and it opens up multidimensional space and higher consciousness. So I think that's one of the reasons they were really interested in working on that level.
Wow. So you actually were brave enough to take this to court. What I'm amazed is, when I did a lot of research on you and what you've gone through, and I don't know, maybe it's because you've been so public and you're a public figure to the point where if they tried to do something to take you out, they would make you a martyr, I guess. I guess you could call it that. But why do you think, with everything you've been through, as public as you've been, they haven't tried to, have they done stuff to try to shut you up?
Well, in the past, it's really interesting because in the past, they were pretending to be my friends. They did stick their fans on me. There was a time when they would actually use their fans as human shields. There was a time when I was working surveillance at the casinos, and I remember they were in town, and they were sending a picture around of me. Supposedly, this is what I heard, that they were sending a picture of me around saying I was armed and dangerous, and if you see her, turn her in. So they were trying to incite their fans to do something potentially dangerous to me. There were things like that I did report to my lawyer at the time. Originally, when I was interconnected with the program, they did tell me rest in peace, and they said things to me that were indications that I was dead, or that I'm on the path of being either put somewhere to be imprisoned or executed to some degree. So they gave me those innuendos along the way. When I went public, I also had an NSA lawyer who was ex-NSA Signals Intelligence who shadowed my case. I think that's one of the things that was a strong arm for me that kind of backed them up. But I will tell you, to this day, I have been public. I put my work out. The band is supposedly retiring this year or whatever, and nothing ever got resolved with that whole scenario. But I mean, insofar as the technology goes, it's still built into my system, and it's a slow bleed and a slow kill. Now, I've said this before: when you get interconnected with this artificial intelligence program, they can turn it either way. In other words, they can reboot you like the super soldier, or they can, when they decide they don't want anything to do with you, they can reverse the signal, and you can have health issues. So I think I'm in that space between probably living less. Probably my life has been split in half insofar as living longer, but also I'm on a list. So I don't know, I could get picked up tomorrow probably in the illusion of, and they could trump up all sorts of stuff about me. So,
well, do you ever worry that, they're going to flip the switch that's going to go back on and you're going to go right back into doing something you probably shouldn't be doing, and you'll have no control? I mean, the technology keeps advancing to the point. You're talking about this happened years ago, and we have technology. The technology moves forwards. Do you ever think that, there's going to come a point where they're just going to say, you know what, she's talking a little too much. We're gonna do this, flip the switch, and we're going to turn her into, an assassin, kill two birds with one stone, so to speak?
Yeah, I can't be programmed, and I think that's one of the things that they really hated about me is that I rejected their programming to such a degree that I don't think I'm programmable. But I will say, when I was first being hit, my body went into trauma, and I wasn't understanding what was happening to me, so I was losing a lot insofar as my vitals were dropping and things. I do remember times where I wouldn't go to sleep because, first of all, they didn't want me asleep. They try to keep you up 24/7 with the program running, psychotronics. So the bottom line is you don't get to sleep. So there was a point in my life where I wasn't allowing myself to sleep after that because I was afraid I was going to sleepwalk, and I didn't know who was remotely controlling me. So yes, early on, and I say 2004, 5, 6, and up until maybe 2007, I was very concerned about my well-being, and I was very highly stressed, shall we say. And then after that, when I started writing my book, I started to reset my energy field and started to reset me insofar as who I am as my own celestial being, my multidimensional design. So I don't see myself as getting programmed down the road, although I am very fiery right now and I'm very fierce. And I think it's because I've been through so much abuse and torture that I'm just a fighter now. And I'm a natural fighter from being a martial artist anyway. So now
you said you have a child?
No, I had a stepdaughter at the time.
Stepdaughter,
and
okay.
It's really sad because she was living with us in the house. Well, she was there every other weekend, but at the time, she was 11 years old. And she even wrote me when I went to Maui after my induction. She said, I saw you looking out the window all the time and you wouldn't speak. What was going on? She knew something had happened to me in that house. And she didn't understand because nobody really got what was happening to me. My husband at the time thought I was being drugged. He was going to talk to my doctor, like, what's wrong with her? She's not speaking. Everything was artificial telepathy. It was all artificial telepathy.
And explain that technology for my listeners a little bit about how that technology works. Because like I said, there are patents out there. You can go check. I think people would be shocked to know some of the patents our government has for things that's not made public.
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, the military is contracted with this. A lot of their groups and their elite groups, beyond the word elite, the black groups, I would say the ones in the secret space program to some degree, have access to covert technology and artificial telepathy because it works. And it works very well, and it makes you the ultimate spy because it's not traceable. Nobody can tell that you're interconnected live feed real time with your handlers, programmers, and operators, and an AI. And with the technology itself, what they do, and I think I briefly touched on this, but they map the entire electromagnetic field and neural circuitry. So they're taking your whole four-body system. They're doing this satellite-driven. It's remotely. They map your entire grid, and they interconnect it onto an artificial intelligence assault program and a live handler real time. So what they're doing is they're opening up a communication system directly through you to your brain, and they access the points that are naturally psychic. They enhance the natural psychic centers. If you're naturally telepathic like I am to begin with, insofar as I'm very, very, very naturally psychic, so it's easy for them to piggyback onto my natural transmissions and then interconnect it onto their artificial intelligence and then create this dialogue mock radio communication system with the live handler. So I know it sounds a little complex, but you can look these things up. And a lot of people do get hit. Nowadays, you have the targeted individuals, by the way, and that's just another tentacle of this technology, but it's more of a harassment program. This one that they did to me was more of a training program. It was an entrainment program for a lot of things, for remote viewing, pattern recognition, and they taught me a lot of things. So at the time, I felt like I was being trained and then abused at the same time.
All right, well, we're going to take our first break here. When we come back, I want to get into some of those projects that that you were part of. And, the going forward, I mean, to wake up to this and to have to deal with us on a daily basis. I've always told people my own personal experience with, being taken. It's like I always hear these people say, oh, I really wish I could be aboard a ship and all that. And I said, careful what you wish for, because you might get it and, you may not be as happy with the experience as you would hope it to be. So, I always tell everybody, I'm like, it's nice to want these experiences, but you need to be careful what you wish for, and you should never comment or criticize. And I know you take a lot of heat with what you talk about and do from a lot of people. And I've always said this, you shouldn't criticize people until you've walked a day in their shoes. And for a lot of people, that is very, very difficult to do. So when we come back, we're going to get into those programs that you worked on. So we have more great stuff coming with Solaris BlueRaven, her fascinating experiences. If you have a comment, question, you want to be part of the show, you can call in at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Hey, if you're on Skype, anywhere in the world, you can get a hold of us. Just go KCOR Radio. On Twitter, use hashtag KCOR. I'll go check it out over there. If you have a question, then you know what? This is Restricted Airspace with Tina Marie. I'll be back. I'm still recovering from the National Wine Drinking Day. That was yesterday. And you know what? Coffee has not kicked in yet.